making a cake for Christmas and you don't know what to add on the top. In this week's video tutorial, I'm showing you how to make this really cute Christmas reindeer. Okay, let's get started. So the things that I'm gonna need in order to make my reindeer is, first of all, I've got my modeling paste. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you may have seen me combine fondant and gum paste together, and this works absolutely fine. But for today's video, I'm actually using the Saracino modeling paste. Now, you can either get it in these larger tubs, this is a 1 kilo tub, or slightly smaller packets. Now, this is the white Saracino, and I'm just coloring this in the brown color for my reindeer. Now, if you didn't want to be coloring the white modeling paste, what you can do is buy pre-colored Saracino, and I will be using some of that also. So first of all, I've got a large ball, and this is for the main body of my reindeer. So I've got about 125 grams. Now, in order to color the main part of my reindeer, I've used some of the Wilton Ivory, some of the Color Splash Dark Brown, and a little bit of Chestnut by Sugar Flare, and I'm gonna mix those through. So to colour your modelling paste, you just want to use some gel colours. So as I do this, you can see how stretchy that modelling paste is. So I'm just kneading that colour in. I've then got some smaller balls, first of all of ivory. So I've just coloured this using the Wilton Ivory. I've got some of the Saracino red, a large ball of the brown, a little ball of black and white, and I've combined some of the black and brown together to give me this dark brown colour. I've then got 2 cocktail sticks and a bamboo skewer, some paintbrushes and my craft knife, a paintbrush that just holds some water. I've got my Dresden tool and my ball tool, some edible glue, some gold edible luster dust, and some dusky pink and some chocolate edible tin, and these ones are by Sugar Flare. Okay, so I'm starting with a ball of that light brown, and this one weighs 50 grams. So I'm gonna roll this into a ball until I get rid of all the marks on the surface. Now, if you do find that your modeling paste sticks to your work surface, you can add a small amount of corn flour just to stop it sticking. Once we've got our ball, I'm gonna start by just pushing on one side. So just flattening down where his forehead is gonna go. I'm then gonna take my fingers and just push in on the side around halfway. Now, taking my little finger, I'm gonna join those 2 dents together just by pushing in. I'm gonna shape this just by pulling out slightly to give me 2 little cheeks and shaping the bottom down into a slight point. Now, we don't want this line, so on the forehead, I'm just going to go in over the top, just smoothing that down towards the outer edge and just pulling the top of that head up just to give me a nice shape. It's slightly more bulbous on the bottom where his mouth and his nose is going to go. I've then got a ball of the ivory, and this one weighs around 3 grams. Now, you could use a rolling pin. I'm actually just going to start to flatten this down. So I just want to keep it as a circle. So I'm just stretching that out, and I want it to fit over the front of his face. We want to place it on so it starts where we've got that raised area and just comes down. So we're leaving cheeks on the 2 sides, and I'm going to pull that underneath his head. Now, if it doesn't stick, you can add on a small amount of water or edible glue. The next thing to do is add on his bright red nose. Now, I'm making mine look like Rudolph, but if you didn't want it to look like Rudolph, you could just add a brown nose. Now, this ball is around 2 grams, but it actually measures 1.5 centimeters across, and then just pushing on the side, and then push that on my work surface. So I just want to flatten down the back so that it will sit flush on my reindeer, and we can place this on the front of his face. With a very teeny piece of white, I'm going to roll this into a ball and taper down one side. Add a bit of water just onto the side of his nose, and I'm going to stick this on. Now, for the mouth, I'm just using my Dresden tool, and just on the front, I'm going to draw a little grin just to give you a little cheeky smile. So the next thing to do is to add his eyes. I want to come around halfway up, and I want these to be quite far apart so it will look quite cute. So I'm just going to use the end of my Dresden tool and just to create two little ovals. And while I'm there, I'm going to add on two little marks for his eyebrows so that I know where they're going to go. Now to fill these, I've got a very small piece of black, and I'm going to cut this in half so that I know that both eyes are going to be exactly the same size. Push down on one side to give me a little oval shape. I can then add a small amount of water into those eye sockets and just drop those eyes in. Now I always think it's great to add a small little white dot into the eyes, as this just really brings them to life. Okay, so for his ears, I've got two little balls, one of the brown, the same that we made his head in, and a little bit of the ivory. So the larger ball measures 7mm across, and my smaller ball is around 5mm. So I'm going to start just by pushing down on the larger ball. I'm going to do the same with the smaller one, then place this on top. Cut that directly in half. Where we've got this point, this is actually going to be the point of the ear. So I'm going to push that down a little bit more and just round that off. Use this bottom and just pull that together. I'm going to do the same for the one on the other side. So use this point. On the side of his head, I'm going to use my ball tool, and in line with where I put his eyebrows, so quite close to the top, I'm going to push a little hole, trim down ears, so just chopping them at a slight angle, just to give me a point that I can push in. I'm going to add a little bit of water and holding it in place, I can use the end of my Dresden tool just to push that in to connect the two pieces. There, our reindeer has two little ears. The next thing to do is add his eyebrows and also work on his antlers. So for this, I'm going to be using the darker brown. And first of all, for his eyebrows, I'm just going to take a very small ball of this and taper it down on both sides. Chop off the two ends around 3 to 4mm. Just lightly push on that cut edge just to soften it slightly. These can then be stuck on with a small amount of water just on those little marks, and you can use your Dresden tool just to pull them round. So for his antlers, we're also going to need 2 cocktail sticks. I'm going to break off around 1 inch at the bottom. I'm then going to take a ball of the brown. So this one just measures around 1 centimetre, and just start to roll that into a sausage shape. Now, before it gets too thin, I'm going to take my cocktail stick, dip the end of that into some edible glue, push that through the centre of that sausage shape. Roll this on my work surface just to bring that brown down that cocktail stick. Now, I don't want it to come all the way down. So if it's getting too long, I'm going to take off a small amount and just keep rolling. So you want that to be around 1.25 inches with 1 centimetre of your stick just poking out the bottom. So I'm going to do the same for the other one. I'm then going to take 2 slightly smaller balls. So these are around 0.5 centimetre, and you want to roll them out until they're the same thickness as your 2 long strips. Now I'm going to have 2 little antler pieces coming off of each of these, and I want them to be around 1 centimetre. Now you want to cut them at an angle. To stick these on, I'm just using a small amount of edible glue and stick these onto the side. I can then go in with my Dresden tool, just pushing that modelling paste together. So then we've got our first little antler, and I'm going to do exactly the same to the one on the other side, just making them a mirror image of each other. To attach these into my reindeer's head, I'm just going to take one of the small pieces of cocktail stick that I cut off, and I want them to come from the top at a slight angle. I can then use my ball tool and just do a slightly bigger opening at the top. Now I'm going to add some edible glue. So I'm pushing it far enough down that some of that brown is going inside, so you can't see the join. So there he has his little antlers. And the last thing I'm going to do is just add a small little tuft of hair at the top. So I've got 2 small pieces of the lighter brown. I'm going to taper these down. I can then stick one on top of the other. I can then place this in between those antlers. To finish off his face, take some of my dusky pink edible tint and just add on some little rosy cheeks. Now I'm going to leave this to one side while I create his body, but before I do, I'm going to take my bamboo skewer and in the bottom just push a little hole, just going in around an inch, just so I'll be able to attach it. So now we've got his head, I'm gonna start working on his body. So I've got a ball of that lighter brown, and this one is 44 grams. So this is just slightly smaller than the head. You just want to start, just as we did with the head, just getting rid of any marks. I'm then going to taper this down on one side, so just rolling it between the palm of my hands, and then push that onto my work surface to give me a slightly flat bottom. And on the top, just push down so that we've got a flat surface for our head to connect to. His body is going to measure just under 2 inches. Using my 2 fingers, just add some grooves into the front. And this is to give us a space for his front legs to fit. Before I make all his legs, I want to add some fur down the front. So I've got a ball of the ivory, the same colour that we used for the front of his face. This ball is around 2 grams and measures 1.5 centimetres in diameter. So I'm going to start by tapering this down to give me a teardrop shape, and just start to flatten that down. I'm then going to go in with my craft knife, and we want to make it look quite furry. So I'm just adding some slits in the side, and I can then go in with my Dresden tool just over the top. I can then take his body and I'm going to add some water, pop that into place. So I've got about a gap of 1 centimetre at the bottom. Bring that over the top, and I'm going to cut that off where his head will go. Before I add on his legs, I want to add in my skewer. This is going to enable us to connect the head. Now I'm working on mine on the work surface, so I just want it to be the size of his body plus around 1 inch. Just have it longer if you do want to attach it into your cake. So in order to make his 4 legs, first of all, I've got the lighter brown. So for his front legs, I've got 2 balls which are around 4 grams and 2 slightly larger ones which are around 5 grams. Now to go with these, I want to create some hooves on the front. So I've got 2 smaller balls of the darker brown. So this is the brown that I mixed with the black. And these ones are just under 1 centimetre. I've then got 2 slightly larger ones for the back legs, and these are 1 centimetre. I'm going to start by creating the hooves. Take my ball between my fingers, run it around, just flattening in, which is going to give me a little disc. And then take my Dresden tool. I'm going to push into the top and just add a bit more detail with my craft knife. This is going to create a little hoof. So I'm going to do that to all 4. So the ones for the front are just going to be slightly smaller than the ones on the back legs. Take one of the larger of the lighter brown balls, and I'm going to start to work on his back legs. Start to taper it down. So just as we did with his body, just working it between the palm of my hands. I'm going to use my fingers to pinch the end. So we want to create a little cup shape, and that's going to allow the hoof to sit inside. Now using my Dresden tool, I want this to look like fur. So I'm going to place my finger inside and just run around the edge, adding in some little lines. And I can then go in with my craft knife, just add in some little slits. Using my little finger just to create a little dent. I can then open that up slightly and take my little hoof and just push that on. Now I'm going to work out where I want it to go. So I want it slightly angled out, and I can then just trim off some of that back piece. Push it against the side of his body. If it doesn't stick, you can use a little bit of edible glue, and just with my Dresden tool, make sure that it's connected around the front. I can then use my Dresden tool, and coming up into his legs, I'm going to add a little groove to look like his leg is bent. And I'm going to do exactly the same for the other side. The only difference is we want this one angled the other way. There we've got his 2 little back legs. Now for his front legs, we're going to do a very similar effect. So first of all, tapering that down. I just want it to be a little bit thinner, and you can work out the length. So you want it coming from the top, but stopping at the bottom to give you enough space to add in that hoof. I can then do exactly the same. So I'm going to pinch that end, opening that up, and put in that hair. Push that hoof into the bottom. Now, before I add this one, I want to put 2 little marks on the side. So this is going to look like where his knee will bend. You want that foot to come all the way to the bottom. I can then pull this round to stick onto the side. Now I want it to look like it's part of the body rather than just stuck on. So I'm going to use my Dresden tool and just pull that up the side, connecting those two pieces. And just as we did before, I'm going to take my Dresden tool, bring it up where it connects and just push in, create a little bend. So I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with first front leg. Now with any of that modelling paste I'm not using, you just want to wrap it in cling film or keep it in an airtight bag or container just to keep it nice and soft. Now I always like to add a little bit of shadow where we've got some of those bends. So I've got some of the chocolate brown edible tint by Sugar Flare. Just up the side, I'm going to add in just a little bit of shadow. Now lastly, I want to add a bell around his neck and also a little tail at the back. So I'm going to start with the tail. So I've just got one of the little off-cut pieces from his legs. So I'm going to roll that out and taper that down. Now using the end of my Dresden tool and then just pull that round. And just as we did with his ear, so I'm going to trim off the end so I get a little point. In the back, pop a little hole, add a little bit of water, push it in a little bit with my Dresden tool, give him a little tail. On the top, I'm going to take a little bit of the red that I used for his nose and just roll this into a sausage shape. I'm then going to roll this out, and I've got quite a straight edge along one side. If you didn't and yours was a little bit bumpy, you could just trim it down the side. So I'm going to add a little bit of water onto the top and just bring this round, hanging over the front a little bit, so it's going to peek out from the bottom of his head, and I can trim off the excess. So we're just creating a little collar. For the Christmas bell that's going to go on the front, I've got a very small ball of white, so this one just measures around 1/2 centimetre across, and I'm going to roll out a really thin sausage of that white. So we want this really thin. I can then wrap this around my ball and just trim off any excess on the back. And with my Dresden tool on the bottom, I'm going to add 2 little dots that you'll be able to see from the front. I've then got a small amount of gold luster dust. Now you could paint this directly onto your bell, or if you've got some dipping solution, you could add a few drops just to make an edible paint. Or alternatively, you could create this bell in a yellow colour. You then want to add a small amount of edible glue, and I'm going to stick the bell onto the front. So there we've got his body, and I've also got his head. Now before I put my reindeer together, I'm going to leave both pieces for a few hours just for that modelling paste to firm up. This way, because our head is quite big, when we add it onto the body, it isn't going to push down and squidge out. After a few hours, I'm going to take some of my edible glue and just add this to the top of his neck, and a small amount just up that wooden stick. I can then take my reindeer's head, and where we've got that hole at the bottom, I'm gonna line that up and just push that. So there we've got our cute little reindeer. I really hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial and will be able to use it to make your own cake toppers. If you have enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to give it a like. And if you'd like to see more videos like this and you haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe to the Cake Spannings YouTube channel. You can also hit that notification bell next to the subscribe button, and this will just alert you every time I upload a new video. So until next time, bye!